Hello, my name is Tom Sicenti, and I am a member of the National Association of Campus Safety Administrators. I'm also a university police chief, and I've been asked to talk to you about what a campus security authority is and what they are responsible to do so that your campus can be in compliance with the regulations by the Department of Education. It's important to understand that the Department of Education has issued a handbook that has specific requirements that a university must comply with. And one of those requirements is that they must identify their campus security authority members and ensure that member understands their reporting responsibility as outlined by the Department of Education. Now, you might be sitting there saying, Tom, I'm not a security officer. I'm not a police officer. I have nothing to do with campus security. Maybe you're a professor or an employee. You're an administrator. Well, the Department of Ed uses the word CSA very broadly. They're not really specifically talking about a police officer. What they're really talking about is four groups of individuals on a campus that they have identified as basically mandatory reporters to them with statistical data. So as you can see here, that in the four categories, one is very clear: a security department or a police department employee. Those people are obviously campus security authorities and have a mandatory obligation to report statistical data to the Department of Education. However, there's additional members such as someone who maybe isn't a security officer, but they're employed in that type of capacity where they're securing something or they're responsible for something. That could even be someone like a ticket taker or usher at a football game, because people see them as someone who is in authority at the university that they can report a crime to. So, someone else that might be a campus security authority that may not think that is someone that the institution has said by policy students can or should report crimes to that person. And finally, we have people who have what the Department of Education says significant responsibility for student and campus activities, including but not limited to student housing, student discipline, and campus judicial proceedings. An official is determined as any person who has the authority and the duty to take action or respond to particular issues on behalf of the institution. Now the biggest piece of this section is someone that has significant responsibility for student and campus activities. This does not mean someone who's employed only by judicial. So you may be a professor who takes students out on an activity. You might be a coach who takes students out on an overnight event, even as a volunteer. You might just be advising a student group, and you take that student group out for events, or you're advising that student group. So basically you're going above and beyond your standard work function as a professor or as an employee and involving yourself in student activity. That makes you a campus security authority in the eyes of the Department of Education. Basically, you are receiving this webinar and this training because someone at your university has identified you as a campus security authority and is expecting that you will report that statistical data. So what's your responsibility? The function of a campus security authority is to report to the official or office designated by the institution to collect crime report information, such as the campus police department or security department. Those allegations of Clery Act crimes that he or she concludes were made in good faith. So traditionally, if your campus has a security department or a police department or a public safety department, that is where you're going to report your statistical data to. Now, this data is required to be reported once a year, but should be reported immediately because there's a timely notification piece that comes into play, which we will talk about in a few slides. But what you need to understand is you are required to report this, not to keep it to yourself, but report it to the people who have to supply that data to the Department of Education. If your campus does not have a police department or security department, you're going to refer to the person who sent you this video and requested that you watch it and ask them, who is that person I need to report to? What isn't your responsibility? We do not expect you, the Department of Education does not expect you to investigate these crimes, to try to determine guilt, to find out who the perpetrator is. We're not asking you to do anything more than simply report that statistical data to us. Are there any exceptions? Absolutely. The two exceptions that the Department of Education recognizes is pastoral counselors and professional counselors. Now, it's very important that you understand that you must be functioning in that role as a pastoral counselor employed by the university to do that. So if you are a licensed counselor or you are a licensed ordained minister and you happen to be teaching classes on the side, and a student reports a clearly reportable offense to you, then you must report that because it was not reported as part of your duties as an ordained minister or as a licensed counselor. It was reported to you as part of your duties as a CSA or as an employee of the university. So that exemption does not apply to everyone. It applies to you if you're functioning in that role as a pastoral counselor or a professional counselor. Sometimes we get the question, why do I have to report? There's different laws and statutes that allow victims to stay anonymous, and we think that's important. But the truth is, what we understand is people don't always want to report crimes to the police. They often want to report a crime to a friend, a colleague, or a professor or an employee that they've established a relationship with, and we want to continue that behavior. However, we also have to have an obligation to the campus to ensure that they're notified of what's happening on our campus and the types of crimes that are happening on our campus. Clery does not require that you report the person's name, only that you report the statistic and what occurred to the University Police Department. Now, there's other regulations that may require that you report the person's name and all the information, such as Title IX. We are not talking about Title IX here. We're talking about CSAs. If your university has identified through Title IX that you have additional obligations, you may be required to report that information. That's separate than what we're talking about. What we are talking about is the specific CSA requirement by the Department of Education. If a campus security authority receives the crime information and believes it was provided in good faith, he or she should document it as a crime report. And good faith means that there's a reasonable basis to believe that the information is not simply rumor or hearsay, that there is little reason to doubt the validity of this information. And this is an important thing to say, that if you believe that this could have occurred, it's not your job to determine guilt or innocence. If you believe that this could have occurred, you must report it. And here's the other thing. It doesn't have to be first party. It can be a third-party report to you that you still need to report that to the University Police Department or the Public Safety Department to make sure that it is documented. So the biggest question we get is, okay, I understand that I must report this. Now, what crimes must I actually say have occurred? We'll start with murder and non-negligent manslaughter. These are two easily definable ones that you have to report if this occurs and it happens on your campus. We'll talk about the geography of where you need to report. So let's just talk right now about the specific crime names and what you have to report and what they mean. So here you can see murder, non-negligent manslaughter. You can also see that negligent manslaughter must be reported. Sex offenses, forcible, rape, forcible sodomy, sexual assault with an object, forcible fondling. If any of these things are reported to you as a CSA, you're required to notify the University Police Department that it has occurred. Non-forcible offenses include incest and statutory rape. If you know of a robbery that has occurred on your campus, you're required to report that as a CSA, as well as an aggravated assault. Let's talk about what makes it an aggravated assault. If the assault would likely produce death or great bodily harm, we would consider that an aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is an important one to remember because there's a difference between aggravated assault and a regular assault, and we will see a difference in that when we get into hate crimes. If it is not a hate or bias related crime and it's a simple assault, two people got in a fight, that is not a reportable offense. But if that fight could have produced death or great bodily harm, it is. A burglary is the unlawful entry into a structure to commit a felony or a theft. And that doesn't say an occupied structure. Some states say that unlawful entry into a home is a burglary, but unlawful entry into an academic building is not because no one lives there. This statute specifically says unauthorized entry into a structure. So if someone enters into your building and removes an item, they are not allowed to be in that office. That is unlawful entry, and it could be reported as a burglary, and you need to make sure you notify your reporting party on your campus. Motor vehicle theft. This is another interesting one that you need to remember. Motor vehicle theft does not simply mean a car. It actually means any self-propelled vehicle that runs on land or water but not on rails. So if someone's storing a boat or a jet ski on your campus parking lot and it gets stolen, that's a motor vehicle theft. If someone is if a student has a moped stolen or a golf cart stolen, that is considered to be a motor vehicle theft. Arson. And now let's talk about hate crimes. Hate crimes are broken down into even more broad categories. They keep our same basic categories that we just covered, but then they have more specific categories. And hate crime is a crime that is done based on a bias that a person has for a specific group. Now, there's all kinds of bias, but the Department of Education has identified these specific biases and made them a hate crime. If it's committed because of race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity or national origin, or disability. If the crime is committed because of one of those things, it's classified as a hate crime. The categories of hate crime, as you can see in Group A2, is everything we talked about: the murder, sex offenses, robbery, aggravated assault. But then in B2, you can see that beyond just burglary, larceny or theft, if it's done with a bias in one of those classifications, we're going to classify that as a hate crime. A simple assault, so any bodily harm or bodily injury, intimidation, destruction, and vandalism of property. So we've covered the arrest that I think a lot of people would be very understanding that, hey, listen, that clearly is a criminal offense. I need to report it. But sometimes as a CSA, you're made aware of incidents, especially when you're maybe traveling or with a team or a group, that you need to know that it's actually a reportable offense. It's an offense that has to be reported to Clary. Those offenses are drug violations. So if it is a crime in your state, if it is a drug violation in your state, then it must be reported. Alcohol violations. Now, this is not university-specific violations. So let's say you have a residence hall that does not allow alcohol, but the person drinking in that residence hall is 21, and by state law, they're not doing anything illegal. But by policy they are. That's not an alcohol violation that's reported. It's a violation of state law using alcohol. The same is true for weapons. You may have a more restrictive weapons policy, but it's not a violation of state law. And so if it's not a violation of state law, then it's not a reportable offense. But if it is, then you need to report it. So you might say, I was downtown at a restaurant having dinner, and I saw someone under the age of 21 that goes to our school consuming alcohol. Is that a clearly reportable offense? That is not, because we have to talk about the geographic location of where clearly reportable offenses are. The first one is on campus. So if it is property that your institution owns or controls, that is directly supported or related to the institution's educational purpose, then it is your property, and we consider that campus. You need to report that. On public property within the immediate or adjacent that is immediately adjacent to campus, and non-campus buildings or property that your institution owns or controls. So let's say the offense occurred on a public sidewalk that runs alongside of your campus. That is immediately adjacent to your campus. Even the city street that is adjacent to your campus is a clearly reportable offense. And so if you are aware of one of those violations that you have seen that have occurred within the Clery geographic territory, you have to report it. One of the reasons that you have to report these offenses is because of a timely warning notification requirement that Clery has. So I think we all understand the emergency notification. If there is a gunman on campus or if there's an emergency happening on campus, Clery, of course, requires that the Department of Education requires that campuses make that immediate notification. However, they also implemented a timely warning notice. And this is for notices that maybe aren't necessarily an emergency, but they feel that campuses should make the campus community aware of them. And the criteria for that is the nature of the crime, is it a Clery offense, and is there a continual danger to the campus community? So a really good example of this is one burglary that occurs on campus it does not constitute a timely warning. The nature of the crime is a Clery reportable offense. However, it's not continually happening because it was just one offense. But a burglary every Friday night in the same location with the same modus operandi, that may show that there needs to be a campus notification. So that is why it's important to report your Clery statistical numbers immediately to the University Police Department or Public Safety Department when you're made aware of them. Now, you will probably have the person responsible for Clery on your campus contact you once a year and say, hey, we need your statistical data as well. And that's when you compile all that information. So you need to keep a hold of what data you have collected and give it to them. The letter they send you with the request will probably include this, but Clery data is for the calendar year, not the academic year. So just make sure you hold on to that data so that you can provide it to that representative when they ask for it, because you're required to give it to the Department of Education in October of each year. Finally, I want to let you know all this information can be found at this website. It's the Department of Education Handbook. It is your responsibility to download this handbook, to review your section, and refer to it with any questions that you might have. Additionally, if you have questions beyond this, I would highly encourage you to contact the person that sent you this training and ask for any clarification that you might have so that you can represent your institution as a responsible CSA. The National Association of Campus Safety Administrators would like to thank you for watching this video and for participating.